Across our planet, there are places you can see on a map but may never be allowed to enter. An island where outsiders have been kept away for generations. A cave containing some of humanity's greatest prehistoric art, sealed because simply breathing inside was helping destroy it. A volcanic island born within living memory, where even a footprint can interfere with an experiment that has lasted more than 60 years. A frozen vault buried deep inside an Arctic mountain, holding something far more valuable than gold, and islands so isolated that reaching their shores without permission can put both you and everything living there at risk. Some are protected because they are dangerous, others because we are dangerous to them. Some contain secrets, some contain history, and others have been deliberately separated from the modern world. They exist behind fences, laws, oceans, mountains, guards, and invisible boundaries. You can photograph some from a distance, you can study others through satellite images. But crossing the final boundary is another matter entirely. These are the forbidden corners of Earth, and our journey begins in one of the most isolated archipelagos on the planet. North Sentinel Island, India. In the Bay of Bengal, hundreds of kilometers from mainland India, dense tropical forest covers a small island surrounded by reefs. From the air, it appears almost untouched. No hotels, no roads, no harbor, no visible electrical grid, and no invitation to visit. North Sentinel Island is home to the Sentinelese, an indigenous people who have lived largely isolated from the outside world. Very little is known about them, and that is intentional. For centuries, outsiders approaching the island have often been met with resistance. Boats have been watched from the beach. Arrows have been fired toward approaching visitors. Attempts at sustained contact have repeatedly failed or been abandoned. But the greatest danger may not be what could happen to an outsider. It is what outsiders could bring with them. For isolated populations, diseases that are ordinary elsewhere can be devastating. Influenza, measles, respiratory infections, illnesses against which an isolated community may have limited immunity. That means contact isn't simply an adventure. It could become a biological disaster. India therefore maintains legal protections around North Sentinel and follows a policy designed to prevent unauthorized contact. The forest remains largely unexplored by the outside world. We don't know precisely how many people live beneath the canopy. We don't know their language well. We don't know many details of their beliefs, traditions, or daily lives. And perhaps that is exactly the point. In a world where satellites can photograph almost every square kilometer of the planet, North Sentinel represents something increasingly rare, a place where the outside world has been forced to accept a boundary. The mystery survives because entering isn't the objective. Staying away is. Thousands of kilometers northwest, another island is protected for a completely different reason. This one isn't ancient. It was born while people were watching. Surtsey, Iceland. In November 1963, smoke appeared above the North Atlantic, south of Iceland. At first, it looked like a ship might be burning. But the smoke wasn't coming from a vessel. It was coming from beneath the ocean. An underwater volcanic eruption had broken the surface. Ash exploded into the sky. Lava met seawater. Steam rose above the waves. And slowly, black volcanic material accumulated until something extraordinary appeared. New land. The island was eventually named Surtsey. The eruptions continued until 1967, leaving behind a piece of Earth that had not existed just a few years earlier. Scientists immediately recognized an opportunity. What happens when completely new land appears, and nature is allowed to colonize it almost entirely on its own? Which organism arrives first? How do seeds cross the ocean? When do birds begin nesting? How does soil develop, where there was once only volcanic rock? To answer those questions, humans had to do something unusual. Stay away. Surtsey was protected from its birth. Ordinary visitors cannot simply land on its shore and walk across it. Even diving around the island is tightly restricted. The reason is contamination. A seed stuck to a boot could become part of the island's ecosystem. An insect carried inside equipment could alter what happens next. Human waste could introduce nutrients that were never supposed to be there. One careless visitor could interfere with an experiment measured not in hours or days, but decades. And the experiment is working. Life arrived. Seeds reached the island through ocean currents and other natural processes. Plants established themselves. Birds began visiting. Invertebrates appeared. The barren volcanic surface slowly started becoming an ecosystem. At the same time, the Atlantic has been tearing the island apart. Waves continuously attack its edges. Surtsey was created by geology. Now, geology is removing it. Scientists are watching both processes happen at once: creation, colonization, erosion. A new island living through an accelerated version of Earth's oldest story. The restriction isn't hiding Surtsey from humanity. It is allowing humanity to learn from it. And sometimes, the only way to understand a place is to leave it alone. But our next forbidden location required the opposite response. Humans had already entered. Then we discovered that our presence was destroying what we had come to see. Lascaux Cave, France, in southwestern France. Beneath an ordinary limestone hillside lies another world. Dark passages, stone chambers, and across their walls, animals. Horses, bison, deer, aurochs. Figures painted by people who lived thousands upon thousands of years before modern civilization. Lascaux Cave was discovered in 1940. What waited inside transformed our understanding of prehistoric art. The paintings weren't crude scratches made without planning. They were sophisticated, large, dynamic. Some used the shape of the cave itself to create depth. Ancient artists had turned underground rock into enormous compositions. After the Second World War, Lascaux became a major attraction. Visitors entered in large numbers. And then, something started happening. The cave changed. People brought heat, carbon dioxide, humidity, microorganisms. Conditions that had remained relatively stable for thousands of years began shifting. The paintings survived enormous stretches of prehistory. Modern tourism threatened them within decades. The original cave was closed to the general public in 1963. Today, visitors experience detailed reproductions instead. That creates a strange situation. One of the world's most famous prehistoric sites is known by millions of people, but the actual chambers containing the original paintings remain beyond the reach of ordinary tourists. The replicas allow people to see. The restriction allows the original to survive. It raises an uncomfortable question. What happens when loving a place becomes the thing that destroys it? And if preserving something means never seeing the original with your own eyes, is that a price worth paying? For Lascaux, the answer was yes. The door closed. The paintings remained in darkness, exactly where their creators left them. If you're enjoying discovering places that most of us will never experience firsthand, like the video so we know to keep making documentaries like this. And comment below, which forbidden place has surprised you most so far? Subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you want to continue exploring the extraordinary corners of our planet with us. Because our next destination isn't hidden underground. It's sitting openly in the Atlantic. And almost nobody gets permission to step onto it. Heard Island, Australia, far southwest of Australia, beyond some of the roughest ocean on Earth. An island rises from the Southern Ocean. Heard Island. There are no permanent residents, no town, no airport, no comfortable harbour waiting for visitors. The island is dominated by glaciers, violent weather, and Big Ben, a volcanic massif crowned by Mawson Peak. It is Australian territory, but geographically, it feels detached from almost everything. Reaching it can require a long voyage through seas notorious for storms. But surviving the journey doesn't automatically give you the right to land. Activities within the Heard Island and McDonald Islands territory require authorization under Australia's Environmental Protection System. The reason becomes obvious when you look at what isolation has preserved. This is one of the rare places where natural processes continue with extremely limited direct human interference. Seabirds gather in enormous numbers, penguins crowd parts of the coastline, seals haul themselves onto beaches beneath glaciers and volcanic slopes. And because permanent human settlement never took hold, the landscape provides scientists with something increasingly difficult to find: a baseline. A place where environmental change can be studied without cities, roads, farms, and millions of people constantly rewriting the system. Even researchers and expeditions must account for their impact. The restriction isn't designed to create mystery. It exists because access itself changes remote environments. And Heard Island has another layer of danger. It is not simply isolated. It is geologically alive. Mawson Peak is an active volcano. Ice surrounds fire. Glaciers descend from a volcanic mountain toward the ocean. Storms cross the island with almost nothing to stop them. It looks like somewhere created specifically to remind humans that not every landscape needs us. And yet, thousands of kilometers away, another forbidden place was created entirely by humans. Buried inside a mountain in the Arctic is a doorway designed for a catastrophe everyone hopes never arrives. Svalbard Global Seed Vault, Norway, high above the Arctic Circle, on the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard, a concrete entrance projects from a frozen mountainside. At night, illuminated artwork makes the structure glow against the snow. Tourists can approach the exterior. They can take photographs. But the important part lies far beyond the entrance. More than 100 meters inside the mountain is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. It is often described as a backup for the world's agricultural diversity. Seeds stored by gene banks around the world can be duplicated here for long-term security: rice, wheat, barley, and thousands of other plant species important to agriculture and food security. The principle is simple. If a gene bank loses material because of war, disaster, equipment failure, or another crisis, another copy may survive in Svalbard. The vault operates under what are essentially black box conditions. The institutions depositing seeds retain control over their material. And unlike a museum, the vault isn't designed for tourists walking between shelves. Only authorized personnel can enter. The general public is offered a virtual tour instead. The seed storage area is kept at approximately -18 degrees Celsius. Outside the refrigeration system, the surrounding mountain provides another layer of protection. Rock, permafrost, distance, cold. Everything about the design is based on redundancy. Because what sits inside isn't valuable in the ordinary sense. You couldn't wear it. You couldn't display it in a palace. Most individual seeds look completely unremarkable. But contained within them is genetic information developed across generations of agriculture. Traits that may resist disease, survive drought, tolerate cold, or produce food under conditions future farmers may desperately need. The vault exists because humanity understands something uncomfortable. Systems fail, governments fall, wars happen, climate changes, disasters arrive without permission. And sometimes survival depends on having another copy. The outside of the seed vault has become famous. The inside remains controlled. A forbidden room built not to hide humanity's past, but to protect part of its future. Ilha de Queimada Grande, Brazil, off the coast of Brazil, lies a small island covered in Atlantic forest. From a distance, there is little to suggest why access has become so tightly controlled. The answer moves through the vegetation. Ilha de Queimada Grande is better known by a more dramatic name: Snake Island. The island is famous for the golden lancehead, a venomous pit viper found naturally nowhere else. Thousands of years ago, rising seas separated the island from mainland Brazil. Snake populations were trapped. Over generations, isolation shaped them differently from their mainland relatives. The result was an endemic species, occupying an extremely small range. Stories about the island often become exaggerated. Claims of snakes covering every square meter, fishermen dying mysteriously, lighthouses abandoned after entire families were attacked. The reality doesn't need mythology. An isolated island containing a highly venomous endemic snake is extraordinary enough. Public access is restricted, while authorized researchers can visit under controlled circumstances. And protection works in both directions. The snakes can be dangerous to humans. Humans are also dangerous to the snakes. A species confined to one small island is inherently vulnerable. Habitat loss, disease, illegal wildlife trafficking, or environmental change could have enormous consequences. So the same boundary that keeps tourists away also protects the animal that made the island famous. It is easy to imagine forbidden places as locations hiding something from us. But sometimes, we're the thing being kept out. And sometimes that is because history has already demonstrated what happens when too many people are allowed in. North Brother Island, New York City. In the middle of New York's East River sits an island covered in trees. Around it, one of the world's most recognizable cities moves constantly. Cars, subways, boats, aircraft, millions of people. Yet on North Brother Island, buildings decay behind vegetation. Windows are broken, roofs have collapsed, trees grow through spaces once occupied by hospital corridors. For decades, the island was used for institutions that separated people from the rest of the city. Most famously, Riverside Hospital treated and isolated patients with contagious diseases. One of its best-known residents was Mary Mallon, remembered as Typhoid Mary, an asymptomatic carrier of typhoid fever who spent many years isolated there. Later, the island served other institutional purposes. Then the buildings were abandoned. Nature began taking them back. Today, the ruins have become part of the island itself. But North Brother isn't an urban exploration playground. Public access is heavily restricted. The reason isn't simply collapsing architecture. The island also became important habitat for wildlife. So in one of America's densest cities, a small patch of land has been allowed to become unexpectedly inaccessible. Manhattan's skyline isn't far away. Millions of people live within the surrounding metropolitan area. Yet the island remains separate. Near enough to see. Difficult to touch. A forgotten landscape, sitting inside a city that rarely forgets anything. If this journey is showing you a side of the planet you rarely see, like the video, so more people can discover these places with us. And tell us in the comments, if every restriction disappeared for just one day, which forbidden place would you choose to enter? Subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because there are still places ahead where the reason for keeping people out becomes even more extreme. Area 51, United States in southern Nevada. Desert stretches toward mountains beneath enormous open skies. Roads cross empty land. Warning signs appear. And beyond them lies perhaps the most famous restricted military location on Earth. Area 51. For decades, secrecy surrounding the installation created a mythology far larger than the visible base itself. Alien spacecraft, recovered technology, underground laboratories. Conspiracies multiplied because official information was limited. But the documented history is already remarkable. The remote Nevada site became associated with testing highly classified aircraft programs during the Cold War. Isolation was essential. Experimental aircraft needed somewhere to fly, away from populated areas and unwanted observers. That secrecy created strange sightings. People saw aircraft flying higher, faster, or with shapes unlike conventional planes. Without explanations, imagination filled the gap. The surrounding restricted airspace and controlled land remain off-limits to unauthorized visitors. Signs warn people not to continue. Security monitors the perimeter. You can look toward the mountains. You can travel through nearby Nevada. But crossing into controlled territory is another matter. Area 51 demonstrates a different kind of forbidden geography. The landscape itself isn't particularly rare. It isn't protecting prehistoric paintings or an isolated ecosystem. The restriction exists because of what humans do there. Technology can create forbidden places just as effectively as volcanoes and oceans. And secrecy has an unusual side effect. The less people can see, the more they imagine. Perhaps that is why Area 51 became larger in culture than almost any ordinary military installation ever could. The boundary created the mystery. The inner sanctums of Ise, Japan in Japan, restriction takes a quieter form. No warning signs about experimental aircraft, no dangerous snakes, no collapsing ruins. Instead, ancient wooden structures stand within sacred forest. Ise Jingu is one of Shinto's most important sacred complexes. Visitors can approach, they can walk through the grounds, they can experience the forest, gravel paths, and monumental torii gates. But there are boundaries. At the most sacred areas, access becomes increasingly restricted. Ordinary visitors do not simply walk into the innermost sanctuaries. The limitation isn't based on danger. It is based on sacredness. That distinction matters. Modern travel encourages the idea that every remarkable place should be accessible. Buy a ticket, stand in line, take the photograph, move to the next attraction. Ise follows another logic. Some spaces gain meaning, precisely because access is limited. The sacred architecture is also connected to one of Japan's most remarkable traditions. At regular intervals, major shrine structures are reconstructed according to ancient practices. Old and new exist side by side in a cycle of renewal. The physical building changes. The tradition continues. And behind the final boundaries, the most sacred spaces remain largely unseen by ordinary visitors. Not everything hidden is secret. Sometimes it is simply not ours to enter. The deepest Antarctic protected zones far south, the planet becomes almost entirely white. Antarctica. The continent, larger than Europe, covered overwhelmingly by ice. There are no permanent cities, no indigenous population, no ordinary national border crossings. Research stations appear like temporary outposts on another planet. Yet even on a continent already difficult to reach, there are places where access becomes more controlled still. Antarctic specially protected areas exist to safeguard locations of exceptional environmental, scientific, historic, or wilderness value. Entering such areas requires authorization under applicable systems. The reasons vary. A breeding colony may be vulnerable to disturbance. A scientific site may depend on conditions remaining uncontaminated. A historic location may be too fragile for unrestricted visitors. The concept is similar to Surtsey, but on continental scale. Science sometimes depends on absence. A footprint can matter. A foreign microorganism can matter. A piece of equipment left behind can matter. Antarctica feels indestructible because it is enormous, but specific ecosystems within it can be extraordinarily fragile. And climate change is already transforming parts of the continent, without tourists needing to touch anything. So researchers face a strange challenge. Study the system closely enough to understand what is happening, without becoming another force, changing it. At the end of the Earth, access itself becomes an experiment in restraint. The forbidden rooms of the world. Not every forbidden place is an island or wilderness. Some are rooms. Behind ordinary-looking doors sit collections, archives, security facilities, and repositories that most people will never enter. Their restrictions exist for different reasons: national security, preservation, privacy, religious tradition, safety. Sometimes the contents are known, sometimes only fragments are public. And occasionally, the idea of the forbidden room becomes more powerful than anything actually inside it. This is what restricted places do to the imagination. Close a door, and people immediately want to know what stands behind it. Put up a fence, and the land beyond it becomes more interesting. Remove a place from ordinary experience, and mystery begins filling whatever information is missing. But the world's most meaningful restrictions aren't always about secrecy. Some exist because humanity learned a lesson too late. Places we almost destroyed by visiting across the world. Extraordinary landscapes have been overwhelmed by their own popularity. Coral damaged by boats, trails widened by millions of footsteps, wildlife changing behavior around tourists, ancient surfaces worn down by touching hands, beaches buried beneath crowds, caves altered by breath. The paradox is simple. A beautiful place becomes famous because people want to experience it. Then enough people arrive that the experience begins destroying the reason they came. Governments and conservation authorities respond with permits, quotas, seasonal closures, restricted zones, no swimming rules, no landing rules, and sometimes complete closure. These boundaries can feel frustrating, especially after traveling thousands of kilometers. But restriction can allow ecosystems to recover. It can prevent archaeological sites from being permanently damaged. It can protect species that cannot move somewhere else. And it can preserve something for people who haven't even been born yet. The forbidden world is not always forbidden because someone is hiding something. Sometimes, the locked gate is there because we finally understood the value of what stands behind it. And before we reach the end of this journey, like the video if you want more long-form explorations of the world's most extraordinary places. Comment below with the location you believe deserves the strongest protection and tell us why. Then subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're there when our next journey begins. Because there is one final idea, connecting every place we've seen. The world beyond the boundary North Sentinel remains isolated because contact could transform a society that has resisted outside interference. Surtsey remains protected because scientists need to watch nature colonize new land with minimal human disturbance. Lascaux remains closed because visitors were changing an environment that had preserved prehistoric art for millennia. Heard Island requires authorization because one of Earth's most isolated ecosystems is valuable precisely because human influence remains limited. The Svalbard Seed Vault restricts access because it safeguards agricultural genetic material intended to survive crises far beyond the Arctic. Snake Island protects both people and an animal found almost nowhere else. Military installations restrict land because secrecy is part of their function. Sacred spaces restrict entry because not every boundary exists for scientific or political reasons. And Antarctica contains protected areas because even the most enormous wilderness on Earth contains places fragile enough that a human footprint matters. Different continents, different histories, different reasons. The same fundamental idea. There are still boundaries on Earth. That seems almost impossible now. We live in an age of satellite imagery. Commercial aircraft cross oceans every hour. Ships reach remote islands. GPS can place a blue dot almost anywhere on the planet. Millions of photographs have mapped places most humans will never personally see. The Earth feels completely discovered. But discovery and access are not the same thing. We can know a place exists without possessing it. We can study it without standing inside it. We can protect something without turning it into an attraction. And perhaps the strangest thing about these forbidden worlds isn't that we're unable to enter them. It's that some have survived precisely because we can't. There are forests that don't need another trail, islands that don't need another resort, sacred rooms that don't need another photograph, caves that don't need another visitor, species that don't need another encounter, and communities that don't need the outside world deciding that curiosity is more important than their isolation. For centuries, exploration meant crossing boundaries, sailing farther, climbing higher, entering what had never been entered. But in the modern world, perhaps exploration also requires knowing when to stop. Standing at the boundary, looking beyond it, understanding why it exists, and leaving the other side untouched. because the last truly forbidden places on Earth may survive only as long as we are willing to remain outside.